Let's go ahead and get started with the Finance Committee meeting. I know we're a few minutes late getting started, but we have a lot to cover. We'll start with the budget. On May 2nd, we had a meeting where JJ walked us through a lot of the sort of background and assumptions related to the budget, and people had an opportunity then to ask questions, which I thought was very, very helpful, and thank you all for your participation in that special meeting. We talked at that meeting about some of the drivers on the cost side, salary increase, the rising inflationary environment. We also talked about things we're doing to control costs with respect to efficiencies, and JJ will talk more about that today. So again, appreciate the thoughtful questions that people asked. I thought that was a very good session. We'll also today be presented for our consideration several capital project financial plans and the delegation of signatory authority to JJ for several contracts in the medical center, one in the academic division, and then JJ will give us an update on all the other things she's doing with her time. Before we get to the, well, actually I'll wait on that till the end because we don't have everybody here. So let's go ahead and turn it over to JJ.
Great, thank you, Chairman Blue, Vice Chairman Jim Murray, and to the rest of the board. As you know, this is an annual process and one that we literally spend 12 months on. So without further ado, we're going to walk through systematically sort of our value proposition, what are we doing to control costs, and then bring the budget proposal for you, which is actually inclusive of 3 state agencies, so the academic, the medical center, and the college at Wise today. 2 of those have been discussed in prior committee meetings, so I will go expeditiously. Chancellor Henry is here as well as Dr. Craig Kent, so if we get into more detailed questions within their budgets, we can handle that accordingly. Last, what I would say before I deep dive is that this is a true team sport. So the president, the 3 EVPs, and many, many people are involved in building the annual $5.8 billion financial plan that you will see here today. I do want to give a quick shout out to Katie Walker, who is our university budget director, and her team that works with her, as well as the government relations team under Colette and Jen Siciliano, because one of the key drivers in our budget is commitment from the Commonwealth, and we were particularly pleased with some of the funds that came through from the Governor and General Assembly this year, which I'll detail out, which we did not have at May. Without further ado, I'm going to move quickly, and if you have any questions, please stop me along the way. So first and foremost, as Jim speaks way more eloquently than I, we talk about UVA's value proposition. It underpins everything we do. As you know, we are incredibly fortunate to be the fiscal stewards of this great institution, and we continue to attract and retain world-class faculty, researchers, as Craig profiled yesterday, students and staff. We are one of the top graduation rates in the country, as you know, and these are just a sample of the metrics in terms of value proposition. Interesting to note, we're also seeing a lot of rankings nationally move towards this, and I think UVA is quite well positioned in terms of how we've been able to manage our finances across the board, and it will continue to be a pillar of strength for us. Very quickly, we're particularly proud of the value that we provide to our students and families. And again, recent rankings, as we've talked about, Forbes, #1 public in the country for financial aid. And we talk a lot about the underpinnings of Access UVA and how Steve Farmer and his team help shepherd our new incoming class despite all the headwinds with FAFSA. And then also Money Magazine, which is one of my favorites, Best Value. One of the other things we also underpin is, and Jim did this in the research last year, but I thought it was really important, is as a Virginian, you can't go to a top public institution in the country for less cost and top ranked. So again, really thinking about the overall value proposition of us. I'm not going to spend any time on this. Again, Craig said it way more eloquently than I. What's going on in the health system is transformative, and the rankings are showing. And so again, we are the envy of the nation in the sense of the ability to be both a powerhouse in terms of the academics, but also patient care and cutting-edge research. So the 3 EVPs spend a lot of time together thinking about how to maintain and continue to excel in those dimensions of our strategic plan. All of that does require resources, so hence why it comes up here. And last but not least, you've already heard from Chancellor Henley, and again, she speaks way more eloquently than I of the power of education and the lives she is transforming in and around the Appalachia region, and it's a delight to work with her and her team every day, and just so excited to see all of their accomplishments. And again, we have, thanks to the dedication of this board, they've really challenged us when fiscal times were more challenging to really think about shared services and how to help Donna and her leadership team really excel, and it's just been a great partnership. But again, in terms of shared services, it's been a way to optimize and save funds and allow limited dollars that Donna has had to really put towards helping students, recruit students and maintain students and her faculty. So budget process, I think it's kind of important to sort of orient, and we did spend some time in May talking about this. Not everyone was able to join, so just very quickly at a high level, we are, number one, decentralized. So the process literally goes on 12 months a year, so as soon as we're done today, assuming your approval, we will then start a new fiscal year July 1 and begin the process all over again. It is a process that, and I'll go right through it, it literally is month by month. We start first in July 1 with the start of a new fiscal year, and one of the first key things we do is work in concert with the Commonwealth. So the Commonwealth, as we've talked about earlier today, is critically interested in sort of our overall 3 state agencies, the Med Center, the Academic Division, and the College of Wise, and we submit comprehensive financial plans to them. We are incredibly grateful for the support of the Commonwealth, and within that strategic plan, 6-year plan, you, the board, also will see it. So again, this fall, you will have the opportunity to look at key initiatives that we're requesting Commonwealth funding for, key areas of efficiency, budget cuts, and so forth. So all that, again, will start again. As soon as we get done here, we'll be moving on to next year, and we always look at out 6 years. So in terms of influence and discussion, great process again, just underway, thinking about the second year of the biennium, and then what's important in terms of how we, UVA, Medical Center, College at Wise, can help further the goals of the Commonwealth. We then, across the institution, work on guidelines for each of the units on the academic side, and then College of Wise, and then the Med Center actually goes a little bit later. They start in December, and we'll detail that. But we work within all of what we call the operating parameters. What are we seeing in terms of compensation? What are we seeing in terms of fringe or other related costs? How are we doing with contractual inflation and so forth? So we put budget guidelines out, and we ultimately engage every unit, whether it's led by Craig, Ann, or myself, across the institution to talk about what is going on within their discrete unit. What are the budget drivers? Do they have enough resources? How are they going to cost contain? If there's a request for additional funds, how do we manage it? In December, we come back to you all to work on tuition and fees, so you all have that opportunity, and we did a hearing there. In March, then, we get the typical state budget finalization, so how much new funds will be coming from the Commonwealth. As you know, this year that process was delayed, so when we met in May, we still didn't have the final decisions from the Commonwealth. I'm happy to report the Governor and the General Assembly came to consensus. We do have a state budget, and we have put those numbers in for your consideration. And then today we sit here before you with a comprehensive $5.8 billion proposed budget for your consideration to start July 1. That was a lot. Really quickly, how do we operationalize the budget process? Again, think of it as each unit has an operating budget in which they are to manage day to day. We provide guidance as the 3 leaders and the president in terms of here are additional costs that may be coming in or resources, less revenue coming to you. We ask them first to manage within their budget. If there are extraordinary circumstances, and I'll give you a great example, safety and security was an extraordinary example where they needed to come back to the team for additional funds. We'll allow them to do that. But first and foremost, we ask units to manage within their bottom line. If and when they need additional resources, they can seek that. And then we obviously look at costs across the board in which have to be covered, things like compensation, fringe, inflation on contracts. Last but not least, then any additional budget requests of this year, just on the academic side, we have an additional $100 million worth of budget requests. We will evaluate those on a case-by-case basis.
I had a question, JJ.
Yes.
When Dean Kibbe was going through the compensation model for the
Yes.
medical school faculty,
Yes.
there was a lot of discussion there, like they were measuring each faculty member on their clinical productivity, their research productivity, and that was all being crunched into the compensation regime. Obviously, our number one operating cost is personnel as a university. Maybe this is partly directed at Ian. How do we evaluate the productivity of other parts that aren't in the medical school? I know that's a slightly different environment, but like in terms of how many students they teach, what kind of productivity you're seeing from them as scholars, et cetera. As we think about head count and what we spend, you know, because it's, I think, something like 70% of our operating budget. Just curious if you could give a thought or two on that.
Absolutely. So the two, so within the School of Medicine, it's CART, the contribution of effort to clinical, administrative, research, and teaching. And so faculty members, there is a distribution of effort, and they're evaluated. And there are different sort of metrics of, I'd say, productivity. On the research side, it's relatively easy to measure. The amount of sponsored research, active grants, number of postdoc trainees, graduate students that are supported, and then there are other metrics. For the remainder of the university, there are three main areas. So it's somewhat similar. So you've got the CART logic in the School of Medicine, and in the other schools, it's research, teaching, and service. And then again, it's going to depend on the discipline. So in a sponsored research discipline, say in the biological sciences, people are evaluated, and there's an annual peer evaluation, which then the chair of the department reviews, which is then sent to the associate deans of the schools, the deans of the schools, and then the provost comes to me. And so each individual faculty member is evaluated annually on that contribution. So again, on the biological or sort of STEM side, in the other schools, you're going to look at, so say grant activity, postdocs, graduate students. In the humanistic disciplines, sort of my own background, some fields are book fields. So, you know, how recently have you published a book? Has it won awards? Has it not won awards? We look at things like citation counts. There's something called an H index, which measures not only how many people have cited you, but how broadly you're cited. So that's sort of looked at on the research side. Teaching side, again, combination of individual sort of student evaluations of the quality of the teaching. Frequently do peer evaluations, and so there's a kind of a metric for measuring people's productivity on that front. And then their contribution to the service mission of the university, right? How many committees do you serve on? What's your leadership role? Have you had leadership roles? Those then funnel into a comprehensive annual evaluation, and the annual evaluations are then shared with the department chairs. The department chairs, through their dean, are allocated an amount of salary that can be distributed, but it's not evenly distributed. So there's a pool of funds, and then relative to people's performance, they're actually going to get a differential amount of compensation increase dependent upon that. And that then keeps funneling all the way up through those various review processes. Okay. So a very, very similar kind of process.
So is it sort of a standardized process like within those different segments? No. So like if you're a history professor, right, you get a score relative to the other history professors every year, and yes, the department heads looking at that?
Yeah, there's a peer evaluation.
Productivity? Okay.
Yes, yeah, that's right. And again, it's going to, let me not take up too much time. Briefly, yes, that's how we do it, and then we review it all the way up. Yeah. Okay. Does that help?
It does, thank you.
Can I add something as a faculty member that has to do this every year? Yeah. There are certain benchmarks that, like in our school, like if you don't meet a certain benchmark, then your performance is classified as low, and therefore you probably won't get a raise at all.
Right.
So there is like a lot of incentive built into this process
sure,
to motivate us to publish and do stuff, so, yeah.
No, it was just great to get that detail at the medical school, so it sounds like there's a similar program in the other departments, so.
Mr. Carter, any of the benchmarks quantitative?
Oh,
Number of students you teach, hours, working at office hours, any of that kind of stuff?
Very briefly, again, it's going to depend. It's not necessarily the number of students. It's going to be the contribution of the overall, say, teaching mission on the teaching part. And so in a department that has PhD students, right, not all departments have PhD students, but there would be how many PhD students are you working with? What's your contribution to the master's program? How many students are you working with in their third or fourth year, say, working on senior theses? Contribution to the large introductory lecture courses. It depends on the size and scale of the department. Some departments, the bread and butter, and then I'll let you get on. There are courses of 300 to 500 students, and that's really how the core introductory knowledge is introduced in a 300 or 500 person course. That's not necessarily the case in another department, where the introduction is a 20 or 30 person seminar, where you're introducing that fundamental initial material, and we would evaluate that you're contributing to the entry-level education, mid-level education, advanced education, depending upon the nature of the discipline.
How do you minimize subjectivity from the chairman's standpoint or the division chief chair standpoint when they go beyond objective criteria and you're dealing with very competitive, very highly academic achieved people, but they might have personality conflicts?
So, and then again, JJ, we do it by trying to take it through 4 or 5 different rounds. So you begin with a peer evaluation, which is a peer evaluation committee. Right? So there's a committee of peers in the department that produce the original evaluation. That then goes to the department chair. The department chair takes a look at that. The department chair then has to take that up to the dean's office level. They take a look at it, and then the dean's office takes it up to my level beyond that. So we try to build in, there's not just one person who is the evaluator.
Great. Thanks, Ian.
Yep.
Okay. So then, just to dive a little bit deeper, we did have a comprehensive budget process, as I stated in May. We had about 100 requests on the academic division side, over $100 million worth of requests. We did prioritize key areas, safety and security, specifically IT security, which we had brought to you through the audit committee. Student advising, additional support there. Elizabeth talked about that with Bree yesterday. And then contractual obligations. Last but not least, obviously, the 3% pay policy. So key areas of focus for us, really grounded both in the strategic plan and critical to the sort of health, safety, and or items that came through the state budget process, notably compensation fringe increases. So many more requests and resources, but I think a very comprehensive process working across the institution. Similar process, a little bit different timeline. Craig leads with Wendy and Eric Shannon. They start in December, really looking at the key drivers for them. And then January doing preload a budget and then going out through all of their units. We do get a bunch of information back and forth starting in the springtime. Again, it goes in through Katie Walker and Augie, and lots of dialogue back and forth in terms of the ultimate budget. There's a separate process that runs, as you know, with the Finance Working Committee, and a lot of the details get focused through that process. So current conditions really quickly. Again, no surprises here. Inflationary cost increases you will see in later slides. We have controlled the cost of tuition significantly below the rate of inflation, and we are seeing core costs go above sort of what our base revenue drivers have been. We are continuing in year 6 investment in the strategic plan. Most notably, thank you, Paul, for the Manning Institute in terms of a university's contribution matching large philanthropic dollars. You also saw buildings coming online in the Emmett-Ivy corridor. Continued support in terms of Access UVA, and then obviously our number one issue is recruiting and retaining top talent. Literally 2/3 of every dollar is the people, and the people is what makes UVA great. We've heard a wonderful swath of people and stories about sort of the talent here at UVA, and so making sure that we can not only recruit with amazing startup packages, but retain world-class leaders. And last but not least, increasing costs and regulatory and compliance issues. This actually got brought up at the May meeting. We spend, again, compliance can be a little nebulous in terms of what you put in that category, but overall about $55 million in compliance costs, whether you think of EOCR, some of the audit functions, some of the regulatory around financial aid. And we'll put another $1 million or so just this year in increasing costs related to compliance. Most notably there, additional costs associated with EOCR and student disability issues. Health system, already discussed yesterday, will not spend a lot of time there. Patient access, and I think Eric spent a little bit of time yesterday on reimbursement pressure and how they're working through that, as well as workforce challenges. Last but not least, I got a question, so just again to orient, overall, we're one tax ID. The budget that we're asking you to approve is $5.8 billion. The UVA Health, as you know, aggregates School of Medicine, School of Nursing, UPG for purposes in the Health System Board. For purposes of what we're asking you to approve today, it is the 3 state agencies, which culminates into $5.8 billion across that. And this just gives you a roadmap as to how what you saw yesterday, and then how items get approved for purposes of you all, which are the fiduciary body today. Really quickly, got a couple questions about overall UVA workforce. We are 30,355 strong as of last week. It actually changed. Craig is in growth mode, so we're adding more positions there, and really excited as Wendy and the team continue and HR to drive traveling nurses down to permanent full-time. But super excited about this. As you know, underneath that is all the work in terms of not only growing your own, but creating pathways to promotion. Earn as you learn, leadership development, so really trying to think about the future of the workforce and growing our talent. Access UVA, again, just people before us dreamed this and built it, and we're excited that we are only one of 2 publics in the country that meet 100% of demonstrated need. This was an absolute differentiator again for this year for us and coming into the fall. Steve Farmer and team yesterday spoke about that, but it really is a differentiator for UVA and something we're so committed to. One of the other questions I got asked again is sort of how does this sit relative to our tuition? As you know, we have been really damping down the in-state tuition lever of the last 7 years. You can see in this chart significantly below the rates of CPI or HEPI. It is great. We are a great value to our students. As I said earlier, we benchmarked last year, and you can't go as a Virginia resident to another top 50 institution across the country for less funds, which is amazing, and our graduation rates are some of the top in the nation. So in terms of getting out to completion, it's also quite amazing. This has, however, put a lot of pressure on the system internally in terms of us needing to find efficiencies, cuts, in order to make progress on the strategic plan and to meet our needs. There was questions also about how our endowment distribution is used. Please note, just last year, it was valued at about $244 million annually. Tom DePasquale challenged me between May and this meeting to come up with what's the value of that per student, and the reality is that the in-state, without it, our base in-state tuition would have to increase about 41%. So that scholarship value that is underpinning as a result of our endowment is about $15,000. Today, without the endowment distribution, our tuition would have to be about $21,000. So there's about a $6,000 scholarship that is provided as a result of our endowment. So thanks, Tom, for the challenge. My team was up for it, and again, it underscores we are incredibly fortunate to have donors and a really robust, diverse set of revenue streams that underpins our ability to maintain affordability, access, and high quality, and this endowment annual distribution is a key component of that. WISE has a similar thing, incredible. Their endowment is now at $125 million, and kudos again to the team and the board and Chancellor Henry. It allows their annual distribution about $5.2 million on a $75 million budget, so pretty significant. Again, the endowment is allowing affordability and excellence all at the same time. Next, state funding items. Great news, on May 13th, it was signed. As Craig spoke yesterday about, the big exciting news there was the Commonwealth's contribution to the Biotech Institute. We did receive $6.5 million of one-time operating funds and then $40 million in next fiscal year's budget. That's why you don't see it all loaded in 25. The bulk of it comes in 26. We are super excited about that and very grateful. And thanks to all of you all who campaigned and helped us in that endeavor. We also saw a 3% pay increase. Just to give you a sense, each 1% pay on the academic side alone is about $13 million. We got about 16 cents on the dollar from the Commonwealth. So again, the large majority of the resources will come from UVA to fund the 3% pay increase. Next, just known risks. It's my job always to kind of just talk about sort of how we're managing this year and then projecting out. Obviously, recruitment and retention challenges. I think the Dean and Craig spoke yesterday about not only retaining some top talent, but recruiting some new talent in, but that is top of mind for us as a leadership team. Again, thinking about CPI inflators on existing contracts, so contracts that have multiple years in it that already have inflators built in that are above the level. Safety and security events that have transpired this past year, and I'll talk about that at the end. The command center stood up 62 times this past academic year, given the volume and activity, so there are additional costs associated with that. And then again, the ever-growing compliance and regulatory environment we see ourselves in. So great news, though, is that we continue to be in a really strong financial position. We are one of four now, AAA rated institutions. Four AAA rated institutions. We don't take that lightly. It's critically important. We're in the market. And we just did Moody's surveillance last week. We do expect the board to receive that report by June, end of June. We have optimized the debt portfolio. At some point in the future, we will need to go back at the market. I will tell you sitting here today, I hope no time soon, because the rates are not favorable based on what we were able to achieve in 2021. And then we still see exceptional student demand, patient care, and so forth.
Just quick clarifying question. We're one of how many that are 8 AAA?
We're only one of 4 left in the country, AAA rated institutions by all 3 rating agencies.
Across the United States?
Yes.
Whoa. Okay, thank you.
Yes, yeah. So really quickly, as we talked about both in May and back in the fall, we have many more needs and wants and resources available. So we have spent a lot of time scrutinizing the base and trying to find ways to be more efficient and effective, either redeploying, stop doing. We also, as you know, came out of a pretty intense budget cutting time period during COVID. So just to orient us back 2.5 years ago, in fiscal year 21, we went through a hiring freeze. We did 8% budget cuts. Lots and lots of stress and strain in the system in order to navigate financially through COVID. Coming out of that, though, however, given our desire to keep moving forward with respect to the good and great plan, we also knew we'd have to continue to contain costs, particularly in light of the discussion around also being thoughtful about affordability and accessibility with some of the key levers like tuition. So just wanted to underscore some of the work that we've been doing and then where we're headed next. Good news is we spent all of fall of this year. Commonwealth had hired Boston Consulting Group. I've detailed for you those reports now twice. The basic takeaway was UVA is punching way above its weight, very efficient and very effective. Still has more work to do, and that's what we're working on now. As a result of that, the co-chairs of the Finance Committee, led by Jim and Bob, engaged with us, and we consulted with a third party to also take a look at some key issues. I'm going to talk about that next. Well, I'm not going to go there next, but maybe I will just go through. Last but not least, what I would say is, in addition to that, we also now have 3 JLARC studies underway from the Joint Legislative Commission from the Commonwealth, looking at additional questions and comments. And we're doing a comparative report. So I'm going to turn quickly to some of the items that are in flight in terms of reallocations and efficiencies across the 3 organizations.
Hey, JJ, when do you expect that JLARC study to be done?
Well, we have 3 open requests now. I think the earliest we would see it is 6 to 8 months later, because they do data submissions, then they ask questions, they likely do follow-up submissions, and then we get reports. So it can take 6 months to a year.
So end of this calendar year, early next?
Yes.
They have to report by December.
They have to report by December,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. But sometimes they get delays, though. I don't know. Mike's, well, they'll report something by December, right? Yeah, okay. Okay, so academic division, some of the work we're doing is obviously operational reorganizations, new approaches to marketing, unit level reallocations, clear technological improvements, really kind of thinking about shared service models, where does it make sense to partner versus, again, we're highly decentralized, and then collaborations with other state agencies. In the medical center, again, discussed yesterday, some focus in on revenue cycle, managed care contracting. One of the key findings, you'll see it later in the presentation, is really thinking about shared services for contracting of goods and services across academic and the med center. We could get greater volume discounts. And then Wendy's done a ton of work with her team on efficiency care models. So really, really kind of going across the institution and finding ways to cut costs, be more efficient, and then ultimately more effective. Next is in WISE, and again, Chancellor Henry's talked a lot about this in terms of how she's been able to really move the needle in her operations, restructuring the auxiliary debt, which we had the honor and privilege of working with her on, transitioning to UVA for some shared services, so like the emergency alert system, they were able to piggyback off ours, and then some of the programs that she's recently launched. I'm going to turn really quickly to this. This has been an effort led by Bill Ashby on our team in conjunction with the leadership team. We engaged a third party to really go across the institution once again and think about where are other areas of opportunity for UVA in the coming months and years. We did a presentation for you back in December. We engaged them in September. In December, we came back to you all and sort of said, there are some key areas of interest of us. We went back and worked all through the spring, and today we're excited to share with you some of the things we believe that we can make additional progress on in the coming fiscal year, and we've built some of this into the budget in order to make the numbers work. So the themes that came back in December were obviously people and organization, because 67 cents on the dollar are the people, so if you really want to continue to find more efficiencies, you have to think about that. How do you optimize and scale? And then technology as an enabler. So sometimes you can put in technology and reduce other costs. I'm moving quickly. Am I moving quickly enough? Keep going.
So
Okay.
far, I haven't heard anyone tell you to move faster.
I think you can move any further.
So based on alignment of current initiatives, we came back. The three key areas that came into direct focus for us were thinking about spend management. Again, this is really in the area of, are we buying like goods and services across WISE, UVA, and the academic and the medical center? Could we get greater purchasing discounts? Second was space. So how are we utilizing our space? We are both space constrained and have lots of space. So how do we think about optimizing that? And the third area of focus for us was research. We want to go from excellent to preeminent, and so that will need investment, but are there models that we could do it more efficiently or effectively? Another area of opportunity, as we talked about earlier today, is we added this fourth category, thinking about how can we bolster the academic division and the medical center coordination in the area of financial back office accounting. So all of those are sort of four areas of incredible work between January and June. So just to dive a little bit more in depth on the first category, spend management. So there are opportunities. We found about $4.6 million in savings across 12 categories, primarily leveraging contracts in two ways, taking academic and the med center, bringing them together, and also because we are in a consortium across the Commonwealth, adding them to some of our contracts where we had additional discounts for which we could potentially receive some additional savings overall. So all of that the sourcing team is working on. It's been a phenomenal partnership with people in Wendy Horton's team and in Augie's team. Again, all led by Bill Ashby and the team, but some real opportunities here. The second level, which I think will take a bit more time, is we tend, because we're decentralized, to give people lots of choice. So if we want to take another swath of savings, that really means we're going to constrain and drive traffic to specific vendors. I think that needs some more work for us, but we are well on our way first in sort of optimizing purchasing across the institution, thinking sort of one UVA-like. Next item was space optimization. So great news is we have lots and lots of ability to collect data and collect analysis. There is some suggestion that we should add some more remote monitoring, like swipe access and a more robust data system. But the work being done by Colette and her team is tremendous. They actually did review all of our contractual leases and did not find any savings, which was a little bit of an eye-opener, but did suggest as new buildings are coming online, thinking about using our existing facilities as swing space, versus going out and doing third-party contracting. So we are in the process of doing that. The big item here also, and it's for approval later, is retrofitting Zemer Hall, which currently is for continuing professional ed. We are moving them to HR Emmett Ivy and putting all of safety and security in one physical location. That is both cost-effective in terms of refurbishing existing space, as well as bringing 7 disparate units together under one house. So happy to talk about that later in the presentation. The last one that's really an area of focus for us is research administration. Obviously, lots of work still underway here. I would not put this in as cutting costs necessarily. It's about thinking about as we scale, how do we scale in the most efficient and effective manner. Thinking about our overall research administration organization, and Craig and Ian have just recruited a world-class vice president of research who's coming on board next week? Monday. Standardizing and transforming processes, and then also thinking about sort of our F&A recovery off of grants and so forth. So lots of work still underway there, but pretty exciting.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah.
What are you considering with regard to the F&A? I'm just curious about what changes might happen.
Yeah, so I think the critical one is to try to grow it, right? As you think about the Biotech Institute coming online and being able to go renegotiate, getting more dollars off our federal agencies. I think the second is long-term, how do you think about shared service models? As we bring this incredible facility online, how is the distribution of F&A being done? And is there a recovery mechanism maybe to maintain some of these facilities?
Thank you.
Yeah. And last but not least, we've talked about just also thinking about financial collaboration. As I said, we're highly decentralized, and there are opportunities to sort of think about efficiencies where we're doing like things, whether it's WISE, Med Center, the academic division. Could we do it together more efficiently or effectively? And we're on that journey now. More to come on that. Okay. Proposed operating budget. So we talked a little bit about the value proposition, our approach to how we go annually into the budget process, the work that we get from the Commonwealth, how do we maintain both being effective and efficient, knowing, again, we have many more needs and wants than resources available. So I want to talk just a little bit at a high level and then dive into the specifics. So the budget the management team is to present to you today is $5.8 billion. As you can see, it is across the 3 agencies, and I'm going to dive into each one specifically. The Medical Center, which also includes UVA Community Health, the Academic Division, which also includes School of Medicine, School of Nursing, because that's how it is organizationally optimized, and then the College of WISE. It does represent about a 6.5% increase over last year's budget. So first is the academic division here. You can see a $2.4 billion budget. The key drivers of the revenue are net tuition and fees. That was approved back in December. There is also, remember, graduate tuition in there as well. So it's not just undergraduate. That's why the growth is a little bit higher than 3%. State appropriations, we are seeing approximately 11% growth. Thank you again to the Commonwealth. The large bulk of that is some of the enhancements from biotech, as well as increasing financial aid, as well as their proportion of the salary increases. So again, about 16 cents on the dollar in the academic division is coming from the Commonwealth.
Sponsored question about if the sponsored research, maybe you were about to say this. Does that include the F&A? Or is that net, or is that gross? The external sponsored research. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, Judge, I had a question.
Yeah.
One, this is strictly a budget question. One area of public controversy a couple months ago was the size of our DEI budget.
Yeah.
And what's the DEI budget for the upcoming year, and how does it compare to the previous year?
Yeah, so the only material enhancements to the DEI budget this coming year is additional funds in EOCR, which is a regulatory compliance requirement. We are seeing increased caseloads, and EOCR falls under the Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion. I think the total budget this coming year is about $7.7 million or $7.8 million. If you give me 30 seconds, I'll pull it. Yeah, 7.486. But that does include a bunch of other items, not only like programming, but it includes the Office of EOCR, which is a big, heavy compliance required case investigation. And we spent a lot of time talking about that through the budget hearings because their caseloads have grown significantly. And so we not only put additional funds in the base, we put a contingency on the side because we're concerned about, we have to do investigations timely in that regard.
How many individuals does that reflect that are employed, direct or indirect, for DEI purposes?
You're talking about the entire office, or which includes all of the investigators? I mean, there have been a couple of different analyses. So the question we were asked last spring was the work about 55 full-time positions across the institution where 80% of their time or more. That does not all reside in the Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion's budget. Remember, there are positions out. The budget that I was just answering the question from Doug Wetmore is the entire Vice President's office, which is about 7.5 million. That includes EOCR. So there's a whole investigative arm within that unit.
Okay.
And Judy, just for clarification.
Yep.
EOCR provides investigatory services for compliance with
Correct.
civil rights laws.
Correct.
Which would include religious freedom
Yes.
and whatever complaints.
Yes.
And
across
that's
the board.
required to be done and reported.
Yes, and the caseloads have been growing, and it was a significant conversation through the budget process because being out of compliance with that would be wildly problematic.
So if a department had a DEI officer, would that be in the 7 million that you were talking about, or would that be in their department?
It could be in either. We have a portion of experts that reside within the Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion office. There are also people who spend time out in the organization as part of their job doing diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, and they may be included. I give a doctor, for example, who might be working in the medical center, who's a urologist who also does work in the DEI space. That person would reside.
I just want to say, sometimes that's added as, this counts as service to
Correct.
the university, so it's part of their service effort. It's not like added money per
Correct.
se.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
What's the breakdown between faculty and staff in the 1.7 billion on academic or either side for that matter?
I will get that for you if you give me like 2 minutes. I've got to dig through my material. So of the 30,000 person workforce, I have a complete breakdown of faculty, staff, but I don't know that I have that memorized, Bert. Okay.
Wouldn't have got you. You can get back to me.
Okay, great. So the next big category I just want to talk about, because we spent a little bit of time both in May talking about it, and then the challenge from Tom. The endowment distribution will grow to about $320 million this year. Again, I just want to underscore the incredible power of the endowment and the contribution that it provides overall. Biggest expense on the $2.4 billion budget is our people, our number one asset, and it is about $1.6 billion. Obviously, we have to have a balanced budget. We always have to have more revenue than expense, and we try to have net resources dedicated to making sure all our reserves are healthy, strategic initiatives if there's any extra one-time money. Medical center, again, School of Medicine, School of Nursing sit in the academic division, so I'm turning now to the medical center. That also includes the acquisitions of community health. They are at $3.37 billion with about $3.3 billion of expenses proposed, about 3.2 in terms of net patient service revenue. And then obviously their number one driver is labor, and then right behind that supplies. And Eric Shannon talked some yesterday about the growing expense on supplies and some of the incredible drug therapies that are coming online, but the cost associated with that. And again, same thing.
The 117 is other revenue. Does that include research? Is that or is research somewhere in the 3.2?
The bulk of the research comes over in the academic division, because School of Medicine, School of Nursing, the key ones drive through there. There's a core, smaller piece of it in here, but it's much smaller because School of Medicine is one of the big drivers of of research that actually flows through the academic division.
Okay, all right, confusing. Got it.
Okay, and then next is the College at Wise. Really, again, I'm going to turn to the Chancellor if there are real detailed questions. About $75 million of sources, state appropriations. Obviously, the state's been incredibly generous in recent years. Net tuition, you can see about $15.4 million. And then the bulk, no surprise again, $40 million really driving towards faculty and staff salaries, so even higher proportion.
Okay, there were actually two numbers in my request, and I'm sure you'll get the next one for the next meeting. The next one was how much went to scholarships. So we have tuition, which was a lot higher if we didn't have these big scholarships. But there's also a tremendous amount of student scholarship paid for in the numbers where your bill would be $10,000 and we lend you $5,000 or we give you $5,000. And we figured out how much of that we control with the university, how much of it's shift and other, not Pell Grants and stuff. There's actually endowment dollars that go to scholarship that affect what people pay.
Yeah, I'm still working on that second calculation.
So this is a real big grasp of it. The average tuition for the state is $11,000. And I finally learned after 8 years why it has to be that, because you can't take money out of endowment if there's not a price tag on it.
Right.
You only spend it to me a dozen times, so I caught it on my time 13. But when the student's family gets a bill, the bill is $5,000. And that's the average person that pays. So as we talk about tuition dollars and what we spend on tuition, we need to make sure that everybody has the right number to look at, and that's the bill that goes home. And I never quite understood why tuition went up if we had so much here, but you can't take more out of endowment when tuition goes up. So some people pay, but not many, and that's the coolness or confusion on what tuition rate is.
I will make sure we have that before you depart for your event in the fall. How about that? Cool. Okay.
I think it's great for everyone to talk about tuition, because
Yeah.
there's BT, you don't want to pay, few people pay BT, because BT, no one pays it, because it's subsidized at the top level, yeah, and then, but the number at the end, it's even way lower, so, yeah.
Agreed.
Think about a student-wise, they pay $4,700 a year in tuition, is that correct?
I think that's about right.
It's an incredible number.
On average, yeah.
Some people pay more, some people pay less, but yeah.
Okay, I'm going to move next to the Strategic Investment Fund. Every year, we bring to you in June sort of the year in review and the allocations. My suggestion is there were some questions at the May orientation session that we bring back a real deep dive on the Strategic Investment Fund, how it came to be, how we think about the allocations in the fall meeting. So this is really, I'm going to orient on sort of what are we required for this June's board meeting. Feel free to ask any questions and if there's any additional materials that you need moving forward. By way of background, as you know, the Strategic Investment Fund was the brainchild of people way before me. The summary of it was the aggregation of lots of accounts all across the institution. The decision was made to pool all of those funds, put them in the long-term pool, and the interest off those accounts would then enable the university to have a distinguishing ability to maintain excellence. The account it fluctuates because the underlying principal is owned by 4,000 account owners, and it is the interest off those accounts which is available for allocation. Any given year, that fund could be roughly $65 million. In good years, it can be up to $100 million. The board has delegated to the management within a set of parameters a 3-year runway with a formula, and I will lay that out for you today, a framework in which guidelines are provided to management to make the allocations with respect to the strategic plan. We have to report to you in June each year on the status of those investments and how things are going. In the fall, we will be looking for the next 3-year tranche of approval, not today. So for fiscal year 20 to 25, $495 million was approved. Between fiscal year 20 and 24, management was able to award $398 million. As of today, $96 million is still available for commitment with one caveat. It is the expectation that an additional roughly $90 million will be committed to the grand challenges. Ian has spoken at prior meetings regarding that, and we'll come back with more of that in the fall. This is really along the dimensions of research preeminence. There is then $6.5 million as we transition to fiscal year '25 to be available. Again, this fall will be coming before you all for approval for the allocations for fiscal year '26 to '28.
Question. Jim, you were here from the get-go on this. Is this unique to UVA? Is this unique to higher education? Is this a common vehicle?
As far as I know, there's nothing else in America like it, nothing else in the world like it.
It was brilliant. Brilliant.
And simplistically, we've just said we can use the interest,
Yeah.
in a different manner than the other universities do, when they just keep rolling it into the fund?
First of all, we're fortunate to have had very prudent fiscal management over decades. And the result is that we had it all around the university, some excess reserves. So in the medical center, in the Department of Chemistry, everywhere around the university, there was a little cash that was invested in short-term, sometimes in checking accounts. And the brilliance of the SIF was to go around the university, gather up all those accounts, pull them all into one place where they could be invested at a much higher rate of return, and then take that return until the funds were needed and use it for strategic purposes. They're still all earmarked. So when it comes time to build the bed tower, if there's a cost overrun, we could see Craig here, we're raising his hand saying, I want to take some of my capital out of the strategic investment fund because I need it to build this building. And it's the health system's money, it's not the board's money. But in the meantime, unless that happens, we spend the income.
I mean, it's a way in a highly decentralized world to have some focused enterprise
Right.
initiatives.
Exactly.
Right?
And JJ, you had said it was 3-year increments of
Right.
approval, and then we got one coming up in this fall.
Correct.
But the numbers you showed us were 5 for 20 to 25.
Yeah,
Was that a 5-year increment, or was there been?
So we went back, when I got here during fiscal year 19, we had to do a recalibration of it. So we did a 5-year look back, like a 2-year look back, 3-year forward. So that's why we sort of aggregated on the 5-year and anchored it to the strategic plan as well. So normally it's a 3-year chunk, but there was some serious work that needed to be done when I first got here in reconciliation of accounts.
And I know, I mean, I don't know how tight we are on time, but whether it's right now or in the fall, you talked about the parameters
Yeah.
that are around it. I
Yeah.
think it would be a good refresher just
Yeah.
to sort of hear what that looks like. Again, Niall's not the time for that.
Yeah, I think September, when the administration comes for the next round.
Okay.
That should be a focus.
Yeah.
Okay,
If you were interested to call an expert witness in September, I'd suggest you ask Rusty Connor to come back to the board meeting in September, because he was one of the principal architects.
Or Bill Goodwin.
Or Bill Goodwin, either one of them,
Yeah.
because the history here is really important, and why it was done and what the board's expectation was at the time it was done is something that I at least believe should be honored.
Is it all the interest or the interest over a certain return? Is it the excess interest or all the interest that goes into the SIF?
Theoretically, all the interest would be available, but what you'd like to do is see some of those funds compounding. So what the board did at the time was set a rough estimate and said $100 million a year. And if you take those 5-year numbers, it's about $100 million a year.
Right. But it can go up or down. I mean, I will say part of it's UVA performance, part of it's the underlying principal in the account, which does move up and down. So again, as we come forward, some of the analysis may be, we may lower the band for 26 through 28 based on what it actually resides in those accounts.
And how do we know, Jim, your analogy, not picking on chemistry, if they have a little extra cash, how do we know that they haven't over the last 4 years been putting money back in the cookie jar?
Because JJ has zero-based budgeting.
So that's okay.
So right now, the only place, if there was an extra dollar, it would go to the central bank, and then at the central bank level, at JJ's level, she put it in the SIF.
Yeah, so we have the ability to control how accounts are established, so you cannot go out unilaterally and establish accounts. We run everything through a central bank and through our office.
No one here would ever violate the honor system, of course, but
Can you remind me of one thing, was the bicentennial scholarships, we use SIF money for some of that or not?
It's actually the single biggest expenditure of SIF is for bicentennial scholars.
And we do and the chairman, I'm sorry, my
Yeah.
back.
You want to?
I have a slide on it.
Okay, yeah, that's fine, that works.
Good,
When we fund those, they're funded for life, right? We don't have to continue funding it, or is that not
that's
true?
right. If you
That's
can,
a really key thing, that the amount of dollars that went to interest in your stuff was nowhere near, I mean, it's really key to understand this. We funded 250 professorships, and how many things?
Yeah.
And that's funded, so we have them forever, they self-perpetuate.
I love when you're 2 slides ahead of me.
Trish had a question.
I just
So-
had a clarifying question. So the principal maintains an earmark with the source of it originally? Like, for
Correct.
example, if it came from the school, or the medical center, it's earmarked, okay, I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, so again, the best example would be, we have a reserve fund for operations to maintain a building. We always have to meet reserves and then the reserve levels. If there is excess from great years and returns, a portion of that interest will get pulled off for the strategic investment fund. Again, we'll walk through this in painstaking
got it.
detail in the
Thank you.
fall.
Just in the fall, could you talk us through how to evaluate whether or not the money used from the SIF has been
Yes.
used in a way that has the return on investment we expected, if you could
Yes.
walk through that? Okay.
Yes, yeah, we have a whole review committee, and then the audit team can come in and audit on top of it. But that, we have a whole, we call it the SOC, the Strategic
The SIF Oversight Committee. Yep.
How often do we audit it?
So the Strategic Oversight Committee meets quarterly. There is a review committee within the VPR's office, and then the audit, it depends on what projects they audit. There's a schedule. I can't tell you that they audit everything every year.
But it's part of their schedule.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Hey, you go back to the slide you had up there, because that's really key to understand, is that all that SIF money it didn't go to investment. So much of the SIF money that's left over goes to fund these long-term positions, and then that goes back to the endowment, I guess.
Yes,
right?
yeah, so
It's a really cool thing. If you figure
it is one of our key strategic differentiators and how we maintain excellence. And Mark has been phenomenal at working with donors and getting match dollars in to get professorships and student scholarships and so forth. But the ROI on that is tremendous, and Mark has done some.
Mark's here, would you stand up and just give us a 2-minute oversight on the impact of SIF on your job?
Yeah, so I think this is the quickest way to summarize it on the scholarship side of things. When we first got serious about raising money for financial need was around 2014. And that year we raised a total of $750,000 in total commitments for financial need. And you can see the numbers up there now, that if you look at the combined impact of this, we're at about around $600 and some million that is raised since the Bicentennial Scholarship Fund was created in permanent endowments. So it has been a huge motivator for people. And the other point that's hard to tell from this slide is that 614 individual scholarship funds have been created by this. A fund is a lot different than a scholarship. A fund can support a bunch of students. So someone may create a fund with $2 million that funds a number of students, or someone may create it with $100,000. But it has been, I would say, the key driver in the capital campaign was the involvement of the Bicentennial Scholarship and Bicentennial Professorship Fund. Last thing I will say, I remember when Mr. Murray first suggested that we put $100 million to that, I was thinking about where Margaret was. And again, we were raising about $750,000 a year at the time, and Jim leaned back and said, if we got you $100 million, could you match it? And I think Ollie and Sean about fell on the floor. But I mean, it has just been a game changer for us.
Yeah. Okay, given the focus in the fall, there is, it contained in your materials, the website. It lists every grant we've made, impact of the grant. So I just want to focus forward. The largest contribution of SIF in this current fiscal year was the contribution to the Paul and Diane Manning Biotech Institute. So we are so excited to be partners in that with Paul and Diane, as well as the Commonwealth. So just to give you a sense of dollars leveraging dollars to really transform biotech at UVA and across the Commonwealth. So I'm not going to spend any more time here. These are all the other items where awards were made. That was all in your materials in advance. And again, there is a comprehensive website if you have any additional questions or concerns. Okay, I'm going to stop.
So,
you can take a breath for 1 second while I ask, are there questions on the operating budget for the academic division, the medical center, or WISE, or on SIF? Additional questions?
Let me make one more on SIF. Sorry. On SIF, if you audit it, there should be some losers, because if you aren't investing, if you only have every winner, one of my fears could be a public school would have a loser investment, as long as you have some great winner investments. So it was an investment fund where you will find some of them better than others. And that was known when we started. Obviously, they don't plan on the losers, but they're designed to reach stuff. So it's not as clear, did the fund do well or not. It's, this one did great, this one didn't do great. And that was the purpose of that. But I think less than half the funds actually use that way.
Yeah, and we've actually had situations where the team, Craig, Ian, and I have pulled back funds where we've seen sub-performance. So, and we'll be happy to detail that.
I feel like you're just talking to me, Tom.
Do we approve each investment?
It's an incredible asset that every board member has, and to understand it is the key part of it, because it's an incredible asset.
Not to get too deep into the credits and debits, as Augie would say, but the point that Tom's making is a good one, because the original guidelines, which the president, I believe, is still following, is that we were going to fund nothing permanent from the SIF, bicentennial scholars being an exception, but nothing permanent, so that if people wanted funding to get some program started, it would not exceed 3 years of operational support. And after 3 years, they would have to stand on their own. They'd have to get research funding outside somewhere else. So if you give somebody 3 years to get something started and they fail, it doesn't mean it was a bad investment. It was a good try. These are some of them venture investments.
Other questions, Bert?
And what is the approval process to make a SIF investment? We don't do it here, do we?
The board does not. The board has delegated it to management within a framework and parameters. Yes. You will set the framework and parameters again in the fall, ideally the fall, September of this year, to start for next fiscal year in July. And it's a 3-year tranche of
Management's that oversight committee, the 4 persons?
There's 2 levels. There's a board oversight in terms of a framework and guidelines that you approve, and then it is delegated to management at the senior level, in which we have what we call the Strategic Investment Group and the SOC Oversight Committee to make sure it's always fitting within the guidelines, and we meet regularly.
For the first year the board did it, and I can assure you, you won't want any part of that. We got hundreds, thousands of applications. There were binders 4 inches thick, and there were piles of binders of people applying for the use of these funds. And we did not want to sort, you don't want to sort through that.
Other questions? Hearing none, there is a resolution on pages 5 and 6 of the Finance Committee book to approve the 2024-2025 operating budget. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
So motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. We will move on to a few capital project financial plans. JJ.
Great. So the Buildings and Grounds Committee, as you know, determines whether a project should be added to the major capital construction plan, which you determined earlier today. The Finance Committee evaluates whether there's a sound financial plan to pay for the estimated project costs and additional operating costs that are expected once a project is complete. My office and I have the responsibility to confirm that appropriated funding is available before any project can commence. We have 6 capital projects plans with financial plans underneath them for your consideration. It is starting on page 7 in your board book. The first item is the Darden student housing. The entire budget is $155 million, $6 million of gifts with $149 million in debt. The debt service is a bridge loan for additional gifts, so it is only a 5-year loan. This is for residential housing for the Darden students enrolled in their MBA program. It contemplates approximately 350 beds. Let me get to the slide. There we go. Many, as Dean Beardsley was here at the last board meeting, many Darden peers have on-campus housing exclusively for their students. It's absolutely a needed asset to maintain their competitiveness. The great news is, as you know, residential housing has revenue underneath of it, so it's a great asset to consider the short-term debt on it. We worked extensively with not only Scott, but his head of finance, as well as their foundation, and feel confident both in their fundraising prowess and in the structure of this.
This is a loan from who to who? I mean, it's to Darden, but it's from what?
The loan comes from the central bank at UVA. So we will issue 5-year short-term debt for them on their behalf, the school, while they're in the process of seeking additional fundraising.
We just charge them a market rate, or is there a fixed rate?
We have a variety of different rates. We are actually a bank. So we have competitive rates all across, including 20 and 30 year, but this is a 5-year.
Okay.
Next item is the focused ultrasound expansion. This is critically important. As you know, it allowed the medical center to add 2 MRI machines. One machine will provide patients the opportunity to receive therapeutic focused ultrasound treatments. And then the second machine will do diagnostic imaging primarily for pediatric and cardiology patients. The estimated project cost is $16.5 million, will be funded by medical center operating cash and or funds from the Commonwealth. Next item for your consideration is Penn Hall, second floor renovation. This is a proposed project on the major capital plan, which you approved earlier. The renovation is to convert 4,000 square feet of office space on the second floor to wet lab space to meet increased research needs. It will also provide flexible open working lab space, adjacent support services and spaces. The estimated total project cost is about $7 million, funded by the School of Medicine of about 5.5 and grant funding of 1.5 million. If the school does not receive the grant funding, the project will be deferred and we'll bring it back to you. So it will not move forward without the grant funding.
I just have a quick question. If in the midst of not maybe these projects, but any project, there's material changes in the project, do they come back to the finance committee to reassess whether that still makes sense? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm kind of half pregnant, but I'm just saying, like, it's at what point do they check back in to say, hey, we're running over $15 million?
So there are
FYI,
actually thresholds. For example, in construction, if the budget exceeds by a certain percentage, I think it's 10%, so we will bring that back.
okay.
Yeah. We have gates along the way. And we will share anytime we come on under budget, just so
We
you
just
know.
took one
Just so-
Penn Hall thing out of the capital budget. Is this the same thing?
No,
going
separate
back in?
project, separate
That's
project.
still Penn Hall.
Great question though, because I had the same question this morning, Bert. Great minds think alike. Next item for your consideration is the public safety building renovation. This is currently Zemer Hall. As you know, it is, if you haven't come to visit, please come. We'll be happy to host you there. Currently today, it has continuing professional ed as well as it is a temporary space for incident command. After considerable deliberation, we worked exceptionally well with the Dean of Continuing Professional Ed, and we are in the process of relocating her over to Ivy Building with shared office space with my team of human resources. It'll give her better conference room, better parking. We will then be able to dedicate Zemer Hall 24/7 to safety and security and co-locate 7 different units. So everything from building access control, the UVA PD Police Department, critical incident management team, all of them co-located at Zemer Hall. We believe the total renovation is about $10 million. I was asked why the cost. Obviously, it has to be a secure facility. It will have police assets there as well. So we're very, very excited. Thank you for all of your support along that way. If Tim Longo was here, he'd want to give his, assuming you approve it, he would also want to thank you all for your support and dedication.
So St. Thomas Aquinas Catholic Church in the Priory will be the safest place.
It will, exactly. Good point, good point. We do have the replacement of the chemistry addition chillers. I did not get any advanced questions on this, but by way of background, it's 25 years old. The project will advance our efforts around sustainability as well. It's about $12 million. And last but not least, in Craig's team, we've got Zion Crossroads Shell Space Clinic fill out, about 12,000 square feet. On the second floor, it was originally shelled. That'll be about $7.4 million. So we do request approval of those, or I'll answer any other questions.
Further questions on the capital project financial plans? Hearing none, there's a resolution on page 9 of the Finance Committee book. I'd entertain a motion to approve it.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much. We'll move on to signatory authority for medical center contracts.
Great. So included in your materials are several contracts. By way of background, the Board of Visitors is required to approve the execution of any contract where the amount per year is expected to exceed $5 million a year. There are seven contracts for your consideration, which we expect expend to be in excess of $5 million. The first is Siemens Medical Solutions. This is integrated management agreement with radiology equipment. The next one is Metro Aviation. You heard about this yesterday. Incredible opportunity for the helicopter buyout option. With about almost $2 million, Craig indicated yesterday, of net savings and plus cost avoidance of lease increases. So kudos to the team. The third one is the National Red Cross Biomedical Services. That is truly a procurement of blood. Medtronic USA is orthopedic robotics for a 3-year contract. A second Medtronic contract for cardiac rhythm management products. And then the Huron Consulting Agreement, it's actually bifurcated as a retroactive for waves 1 to 3, and then moving forward 4 to 7. Again, discussed at length at the Health System Board yesterday. And last but not least, Partners and Simons, a contract for media services, which you also heard about at the HSB Board meeting yesterday. Happy to entertain any questions there. If not, would ask for approval.
Questions on any of these contracts? There's a resolution on page 10 of the Finance Committee book. I'd entertain a motion to approve that.
Moved.
It's a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Finally, signatory authority for academic division contracts.
Yeah, when we were going back and looking at all the contracts across the institution, we came close to potentially hitting a $5 million trigger level for Ernst & Young. While they are separate contracts, in aggregate they could ultimately get to $5 million or above. So out of an abundance of caution, my recommendation was to bring all these contracts together and just get pre-approval in case we trip the $5 million. We currently used Ernst & Young for internal audit, IT co-sourcing. There have been a series of cybersecurity issues we've been looking at there. HR public safety consulting, academic payroll, and as we know, we have an ongoing audit underway there. And then Pan Enterprise Treasury Analysis and Support, and then the work that we're doing in conjunction with the medical center around remediation. So again, it's out of an abundance of caution. I thought might as well get a pre-approval just in case as we head towards year end. In aggregate, we tripped the $5 million requirement.
Question. So, support of this, have we looked at raising that $5 million? It just seems really low.
It's absolutely something we'd love to engage in a dialogue on.
Okay.
I'm just sensitive to timing with the APA right now, so we may want to wait a little while. But yes, it is top of mind, I would say, for all the leaders here, Craig and Ian and myself. So yes.
And I don't know, have you looked at sort of other higher ed institutions in the Commonwealth at what their thresholds are?
Yeah, there's a range. There's some that are higher, and there's obviously some that are actually lower.
Yeah.
But
They're
in terms of
probably smaller
competitive,
than we are.
exactly, competitive peer sets, though,
Fair enough.
outside of Virginia, absolutely, they have higher thresholds.
Got it.
So we'd be happy for you all to entertain maybe a scale moving forward.
Fair enough.
Okay?
Any questions on the EMY contract? There is a resolution on page 11 of the Finance Committee book related to these contracts. Is there a motion to approve it? Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. JJ, what else is going on?
All right, so really quickly, I just, we're only as good as the team. You know, I say that endlessly, but I truly mean it. And I just wanted to give you some highlights. It's been an honor and privilege to be the CEO this past year, but it's been incredibly exciting and challenging. So just wanted to give you, just within the portfolio of my team and working across grounds, some key statistics, which I thought were pretty impactful. Just in the safety and security team, and whenever we have a critical incident management, we pull across all of the academic, the health system, and our offices. We actually had 68 command posts this past year. That's a new all-time high for us, in addition to establishing the corner substation. In human resources, we actually had 80,000 qualified applicants to fill 7,000 positions. So as hard as it is to become a student here at UVA, it's actually more challenging to work here. So, which is exciting, but just in terms of the raw numbers of what is happening in the human resources organization. In addition to that, Jim showcased it, but we've now surpassed 150 job placements. This is really looking at positions we're having trouble recruiting and people in the local and surrounding communities who want to work for us. And there's often been an inability to connect those two. And just last week, the human resources team passed 150 job placements. In information technology, just a staggering number, 875 million emails processed and 2.2 million a day. Obviously, incredible amount of energy both in the health system as well as on the academic side, thinking about cybersecurity in the ever-complex environment, and then also working on AI. And Jim said he'll bring that back in the fall. And then obviously in finance, not only the stabilization of Workday, but also really thinking long and hard about efficiency and effectiveness and how do we both modernize and operationalize sort of our world. So really it's an honor and privilege. Too many people to say thank you to, but tremendous gratitude to everyone at Crossgrounds who a lot of us need a quick vacation after the year we've had, but we're only as good as the team, and it's the team that keeps us coming back every day. Last, I just wanted to end on this note. It's so amazing to me. The President's Office hosts a reception after commencement, but just to give you some of the by the numbers of what the team pulled off just for, and now is doing for alumni this weekend. This is just some numbers about final exercises, the facilities management team. They are an amazing, dedicated, hardworking bunch. As I said, Jim just hosted a lunch for all involved in commencement exercises, but their dedication and selflessness through day in and day out, 24/7, is absolutely awe-inspiring. And just thought these numbers and the pictures, including Hubba in the right, were just with smiles on their face in the pouring down rain, were just something to showcase and share with you all. So really honored and privileged to be here, and just love to showcase the talent of our people at UVA. So turn it back to you.
Questions on any of that or anything else in JJ's portfolio? Keep using those thousands of feet of extension cord.
That's
right.
right.
In favor of that.
I like that.
Administrative note, just remind you there's a written report on the defined contribution retirement plan on page 13 of the book. On May 30th, Jim and I met with representatives of the Retirement Administrative Committee to review the plan's annual performance, discuss the overall program from participant and administrative perspectives, and their minutes of that meeting are in the Finance Committee book as well. Then lastly, this is Tom DePasquale's last meeting as a member of the Finance Committee. We talked about Tom earlier. It's also Jim Murray's last meeting as a member of the Finance Committee. He's been he's either been the chair or vice chair of the Finance Committee the entire time I've been on the board, except for the 2 years when he decided to be rector, where he was essentially the chair of the Finance Committee at the same time. Jim's leadership throughout his tenure on the Finance Committee has been remarkable. We all observed that today. Thank you, Jim. Among his many other legacies are the Murray metrics at your desk, which we will continue on and continue to make them better, I'm sure, as we go forward. With that, unless you have any comments, Jim?
No comments, but on the Murray metric, the purpose of this is you manage what you measure. I would not have said anything about this except that yesterday we talked about technology transfer. You can't study everything every time, so the purpose of this is the things you don't talk about in open session you can find on this page. The bottom of the column, it says research tracks technology transfer, dead flat for 10 years. Say no more.
You want?
JJ, your 2 minutes is up. Did you find the breakdown?
No, I will get it. Maybe. Did you guys find the breakdown?
What
Go.
do you want, what's the, they've texted it to you.
Oh, they've texted to me.
Breakdown of
Another efficient way would be just to have them say.
I know. I'm good. Go ahead.
Good with that? What's the answer?
Go.
You asked about breakdown of faculty and staff and the compensation.
Yeah, the 1.6 billion, how much is faculty staff?
So faculty is 668 million, staff is 806. Both of those are inclusive of fringe benefits, and the remainder is wages, especially student wages, adjunct faculty, other things that are paid out in form of wages.
Do you have the head count number of that too, or is that?
Not have that for in front of me. But that's all funds, so inclusive of everything on sponsored funds, on gifts, on state.
That's Katie Walker, for those of you who don't know her, another rock star on the team. So thank you, Katie.
So we'll get Katie to text JJ. Anything else? Mr. Rector, the Finance Committee is adjourned.
Great, thank you very much. We're running a little bit ahead of time. Thank you, JJ, for speaking so quickly. So if you want to why don't we take a 5 to 7 minute break, and do we have an update from Monticello High School?
The Phoebe's team is winning 3-0. She scored 1 goal, had 1 assist.
There you go, all right. So he will miss, Jim will miss a little bit of the full board, but he'll be back for the entire closed session, definitely, so. Maybe we'll be back here at 3:15 to 3:20, somewhere in there, that's good.